Welcome to DTLT today, Martha, in the house and bringing the crowd.
I
in
know
the chat
this
room.
this is probably the most people we've had in the chat in a while.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of audience that you demand. We're gonna have.
And
to
I like
this
that
time.
we're just getting the riffraff, like people we don't even know.
Wow, the riffraff. So welcome riffraff to the show. We wanted to talk about CanvasCon, which both you and I attended last week.
Did.
So CanvasCon was...
Let's start with Canvas.
Yeah, Canvas. What is Canvas? Because no one knows, really, because everyone uses Blackboard. But Canvas is a fairly new LMS. How old are they?
They launched sort of in 2008 as a business, but
Okay.
the product's only been on the market really for the last 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. And Mary Washington just adopted them this summer. Basically, they did a pilot in the summer and then a full rollout in the fall. Is that right?
Yeah. They did a small pilot this summer, and then a full rollout in the fall. And one of the things that we did, which is not how a lot of schools approach this, is we did not do side by side with our old LMS to kind of ease people in. We just sort of went whole hog.
Yeah.
And pulled the switch on the old CMS, which was Blackboard, and went with this new one. From Instructure, and we found out, I guess, a couple weeks ago that they were having their first regional conference, and they were doing it here in D.C. So a group of us went up there for that last Thursday.
Yeah, they had a national conference in Arizona
in August,
back in August, but they decided they wanted to start doing these regional ones, and since we were probably one of their larger and earliest major rollouts for a university, what I got from the people that were at CanvasCon was that over half of them, I think, weren't actually using Canvas currently, but they were interested in it. And then a good majority of the others are smaller community colleges that are using it. So, it was in Utah. Right. So, which is where the company is based,
which is where Instructure is based.
Which makes sense.
So that was nice to see that many other, and DC makes perfect sense for a conference like that because there are so many kind of schools within spitting distance.
Well, what ended up being funny is that I don't know if their main headquarters is there, but Blackboard has an office in D.C.
That's their main office.
That's their main office there, and they actually invited some folks from Blackboard to come, and two of them showed up at the conference, and they had a lot of good fun with it. They were
it was incredibly uncomfortable.
Well, they didn't.
But fun.
They didn't seem to pull any shots.
No, they were. That's what I kind of like about them.
And neither did the presenters, really. Yeah. I can imagine if I was presenting a conference and I knew Blackboard was in the room. I don't know.
You might feel a little uncomfortable.
A little bit, but they had people in there comparing Blackboard to the rich old uncle that you kind of like for the handouts that he gives, but at the end of the day, you don't really want to hang out with his daughter because she's kind of lame. And he went on to build this whole metaphor.
And Canvas is like the hot new girlfriend.
The young spunky girl that is really cool to hang out with, and she's got her own little quirks, but she's a lot of fun, and you like it. So it was interesting.
And the Blackboard people took it in stride.
They did. Yeah.
I guess they gave the Instructure people a tour of their headquarters the next day. I think they were talking about that on Twitter.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. And then what about the sessions? What did you make of what you heard?
Well, the keynote was by Phil Hill, who's...
and I missed that. So.
Yeah, and he was very good. He's with Delta Initiative, so a consulting group, and he covers a lot of just the main LMS market in general. And that was what a lot of his keynote was here's the state of the market right now, which was helpful. It wasn't Canvas. The rest of the day was more, focused on their product, but this keynote was more of this is what's happening in the LMS market right now, which, there's a lot of renewed interest. I have one slide which I thought was really interesting, talking about how the market share has changed in a timeline, and there's an amazing trend here. I tweeted this out, but here's the graph that he showed, and if you notice at the bottom, that squid-like structure, that is actually Blackboard consuming all of these other companies.
You can see them sort of being sucked in.
Exactly.
Like every
time a company started to get large enough to be a competitor, Blackboard just sucked them right in and bought them out.
Yeah.
And then up top there you have sort of the open market, which is Sakai and Moodle up until this point, as the main players in the open source LMS market.
And on that note, I think for us at Mary Washington, one of the things that ultimately really helped us make the decision to go with Canvas was that right in the middle of our process, literally like days after they came and presented here, they went open source.
Yeah.
And one of the sessions I was in, Brian Whitmer was talking about kind of the history of the company and why they had made that choice. And it was really kind of an interesting insight into the choice that they made. And I guess he and the other co-founder, Devlin Daly, had wanted to do that right from the get-go.
Yeah.
But everybody who was advising them from a business perspective was saying, no, don't do that. And then what happened was they realized once they started going and trying to sell it to schools, that one of the school's biggest concerns was that they were going to get swallowed by Blackboard.
Sure.
So at that point, they were able to go back to the business advisors and say, actually, this makes really good business sense for us to go open source because it's what we need to do to kind of assuage the fears. Right. Well,
and it's still a valid business model for them because even Moodle and these other ones, there's a cost in terms of support, there's a cost in terms of hosting, there's all those costs involved. Yeah. So Instructure is going that route. They've got an open source product that if you're up for it, you could install it on your own server, run it completely off of that. But they do the hosted service, and that's what Mary Washington is doing, and I think that's what a lot of schools will go towards.
Well, and the other advantage of the open source model is that they are building out a fairly robust open API,
right,
which they're putting up documentation. Just in the last week or so, the documentation has really expanded on that. And the hooks, there are a number of more hooks than there were before, and Devlin was showing them to me, and it's really very intuitive. Yeah. So I think from a development perspective, that's really great news for schools like us.
Development and in terms of just minor bug fixes. If we were to notice something going wrong and Canvas wasn't going to release an update immediately, let's say they went the way of Blackboard, where it's like, oh, they're not responding for 6 months or something, we could issue our own update to it. I mean, we could test it out, we could run it, and it would work fine. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a nice model to have.
Although another piece of that, too, that we've already seen with working with Instructure is because of the kind of the kind of application they are, because it is this cloud-based application. They don't think of their product as being released on versions.
Okay.
You're just a Canvas customer, and they're constantly sort of improving and rolling out across their cloud of customers.
I was surprised by that. I think they said every 2 weeks they release some sort of update of all the different things that they've been working on. And just, whether it just be minor bug fixes or something like that.
And really, one feature which our faculty and a number of faculty at other institutions have been clamoring for, which was the ability to not release grades on an assignment until you're done grading all of them.
Right.
We're halfway through the semester, and sure enough, that's now a feature, and we were able to email our faculty and say, this is how you do it. And, with Blackboard, in the past, you're talking about a major upgrade before you were seeing any kind of significant feature.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember from Longwood, it's like you would start testing 6 to 8 months in advance, saying, okay, we're going to Blackboard 8, and all the faculty already hated you because you had a new number at the end of Blackboard, and it meant they were going to have to change everything about their courses. They weren't going to like it. Things were going to change. And this seems a lot shorter, incremental,
and very responsive to
improvement.
Sort of the community, and there's actually a place on their support site where you can kind of vote up features. So they're really trying to pay attention to what their user base is requesting, and I don't know, it feels nice to be working with a company like that. So just from that perspective, I think it was good to go in here. And then what about in terms of what you were hearing people doing in Canvas, from a teaching and learning perspective?
I went to one session where Howard Community College talked about sort of their media-rich courses. This guy was very big into putting web video in there and things like that. One thing that I hadn't realized that's really ingrained into the product, and it's something that I think is really compelling, is that not only is it easy enough to just paste a YouTube link and it shows up in the discussion post just like that, or Vimeo or whatever have you, but you can also push a button, it'll open up your webcam, you can record a video as a discussion post or as a comment to someone else's post, and then hit post, and it just embeds the video right in there. So I saw a lot of models where they were framing a course in terms of, one was a speaking intensive type public speaking course. And so a lot of what they were doing was actually presenting in front of their webcam as practice, and students would have to respond with video in kind on the discussion post. Right. So it was a lot of very media-rich environment in that, and it made it really simple. I mean, they demoed it right there. And what's nice about that is that for their iOS app, which I'll get to a little bit later, I went to a session on their mobile apps, but on the iPad, the instructor could actually leave video comments directly from the iPad,
which is really
on the assignments and work.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I went to another session from an instructor in Howard Community College who was teaching a class that was sort of an introduction to the internet class, and she was also using the integrated video as a way to foster kind of community and discussion. And she had an interesting result, which is that she taught one class fully online and one class in person, and the face-to-face students actually made better use and greater use of the web video tool. So that was kind of an interesting kind of observation.
Jim mentioned in the chat he wondered if the webcam feature was going through YouTube or another service. As far as I could tell, it was built directly into the product.
It is, yeah. They actually use Kaltura.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah, they integrate with Kaltura. That's my understanding.
Okay. Yeah, and Kaltura was something that I had looked at in WordPress for video comments. I've got a blog post out there somewhere where I'd started playing with a plugin that they have that does something very similar, where you hit a button, it recognizes your webcam, you can record and post the video automatically. So, I guess with Canvas,
and I think we're just going to see more and more migration towards that sort of ease of media production within those environments, which, just the fact now that you see more and more spaces where you have that kind of flash activated access to your webcam, and suddenly you're not just, being able to write content, but create media content.
Well, and
I think that's a really neat development.
And one tool that I wasn't aware of, actually, that someone mentioned was something called, I believe it's called Zentation, which is actually a way for you to record a video while you're doing a slideshow, and it syncs them up. So you can actually end up with a web video that is your PowerPoint slides or your Keynote slides and your video, and you can sync them up to work together. Yeah. So that was what they were using in their
course. The woman who did the presentation from Howard that I saw, she showed this add-on, and I haven't had a chance to look into it, but it's a little piece of software that you install that will speed up the video that you're watching without making it sound chipmunky.
Really?
Yeah, I have no idea how it works. Yeah. But the reason was because this is a really big class she teaches, and she was concerned with that much video content. Right. How was she going to get through all of it? So she actually had this thing activated, and she showed us, and it just sped it up enough so that it wasn't I don't know, it was just, it just made it a little bit speedier.
30-minute presentation
without
getting
getting chipmunky. Yeah. It's a compression feature, Mr. Rush says.
And
who knew?
Andy knows how to do all those tricks.
Yeah. Andy is not a big fan of the Kaltura.
I should correct the chat. They're talking about you would need to have Kaltura in order to do this. You don't. That's the point of Canvas being in the cloud.
That's right. Yeah.
They have paid for Kaltura on their servers, and it works through that. So
and we don't. And Jim, Jim, to answer your question, that's part of our install with Canvas. Right. We have that feature now in Canvas. They've negotiated that with Kaltura. We don't get involved in that.
And I don't know how that plays in terms of their open source product and what their open source users do.
But, I couldn't say.
It was a really cool feature and something that you could really see a media-rich environment blossoming out of that, which is cool to me. Another session that I went into was on their iOS apps. So they've already got one, which is their iPad application, which was geared towards professors, and it was mainly a grading application called SpeedGrader. SpeedGrader is a part of their grading system in the LMS where you could just quickly look up against a rubric and or not. You don't have to use a rubric, but go down from each student and assign grades to it. And so that was the first application. They said, the one thing that I think professors are going to be using a lot is their iPad to do grading and to quickly check in on what their class is doing. So they could look at the discussion posts, they could look at their grades, and they could make comments to those. I mentioned they could do the video comments and stuff directly on there as well. But they actually also showed off their next iOS app, which is going to be called Canvas, which is geared towards students. I guess professors could use it as well, but it was more geared towards being able to keep track of all the courses that you're in, the discussions that you're having in them, your activity stream. Students could see what grades they had gotten on an assignment there. So a more fully featured application that would be universal for iPhone and iPad.
And they were talking about eventually expanding that to where you really could do content creation directly in the app.
Right.
Back to the course. So whether it's, text content or uploading files or creating video using the camera on the iPad.
Yeah, I think a big challenge for them is going to be, the idea of a file system on the iOS devices. So how do you create a document on the iPad and get it into Canvas is going to be difficult. That's what they're trying to figure out now. They're also looking at a mobile web app and an Android application for 2012. It's on the roadmap.
They really had a very nice roadmap for that. They had obviously kind of thought about all the different aspects of this.
Well, they've got 60 people working for them now. So, I mean, they're just continuing to grow.
Yeah.
So.
And Jim just mentioned a new hire of theirs, which is Jared Stein.
Right.
Which is very cool to hear that he's there. And I heard an interesting anecdote when I was speaking with Devlin Daly at the conference that apparently Jim saw him at Open Ed last week and was begging for one of their new T-shirts. Not one of the ones they gave away last week, but I guess there's one that has the Death Star on it.
Yeah.
With the TIE fighter zooming away, and Jim was begging for a T-shirt. They'd run out, so Jared's supposed to get one for Jim. And I told Devlin that if you have gotten Jim Groom to beg for an LMS T-shirt, you have truly arrived.
Yeah. So we've got that on record.
So we'll have
now.
to see if Jim refutes, denies or confirms that report.
Yeah.
But that was the word on the street last week up in National Harbor, which, by the way, weirdest frickin' commercial development ever. That's a whole other episode of DTLT.
Now, I don't know if you were involved too much with the proposals for what they were looking at in terms of an LMS or anything like that. One question that Michael Willits had was in terms of FERPA, so there's always a concern there in terms of student data and stuff, and their integration with other social networks and Google Docs and things like that. Did that ever come up?
I don't think that it did because all Canvas really does with those apps, it's not really sending data to those apps, it's just sending links back into Canvas, I believe. But it's a good question. I can't answer that fully.
And one thing that might come into play there is actually that a lot of that integration, it's happening from a user opt-in standpoint.
Right.
So
yes, it absolutely is.
The
all
user's
of it.
going in there and they're using OAuth to authenticate
Yes.
with your credentials. So you're not putting in your Twitter password
No,
or your Facebook
yeah.
credentials in there. You're actually authorizing the application to be able to push messages out to that. So they're not able to see your status messages and pull that stuff back in, but you are able to get sort of like direct messages in Twitter, or your Facebook stream can also show your assignment list and things like that. So they've got a lot of interesting integration, and I guess they're supporting on top of that like a learning tools integration, LTI, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but I guess it makes it it's very more modular for people to build products on top of Canvas, and it seems to be what a lot of other products are moving towards.
It is, and I was speaking with Devlin also about an idea that Jim and I had kind of suggested this summer when he was visiting Marion, Washington, which would be like, either could be maybe be a plugin in WordPress, but even more generically, maybe a bookmarklet that would allow a student who's created something online that they want to submit for an assignment to basically just use that bookmarklet to send it to Canvas. So instead of having to go copy the URL, like create your thing, copy the URL, go over to Canvas, log in, find the course, find the assignment, paste the URL, and submit it, it would just be a matter of choosing the assignment from kind of a drop-down menu that you want to submit that for. And they liked that idea. I guess they haven't built it, but he showed me in the API now the various hooks that could be used to do that. Yeah. So that was very exciting. Hopefully that's something that, I don't know if we'll be able to develop, but maybe we can get somebody to develop down the road, because I think that would make it even more user-friendly.
I'd love that idea that, I hadn't played around in Canvas a whole lot before this conference, so I was getting to see a lot of the interface that I was not really that familiar with. And one thing I had no idea about was that when students go to submit an assignment, built into the product right there is that you don't necessarily have to copy and paste text or upload a Word document, that you could put a URL in there, and that the professor would get that URL as the assignment and they could grade against that. So if you've got your own blog on UMW Blogs or something like that, you could submit a post as an assignment in Canvas and it would work just the same.
And it actually, when it gets submitted, takes a screenshot of it so that you have a static screenshot. You can see exactly what was there the day it was submitted, and they keep the URL so that if you want to go see the live site, like if there are features that aren't captured in the screenshot, you can go and look at it live. But having the screenshot is nice, in particular if you're concerned about, okay, so they submitted the URL, but maybe then, they changed things later. So
in terms of timing.
Exactly,
yeah. Sure.
So that's a nice feature as well. Now, there was one criticism that we did have. Do you want to show our image?
Yeah. So they were handing out these. What do you call them? Badges?
They're flags. They're name tag flags.
Name tag
the little
flags.
sticky things.
I like badges, though. Badges.
I know, we do love our badges.
If we're going to get a sponsor, we need to integrate badges into the show somehow.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so they were handing out these little
and there were
flags
things
here.
like nerd and I love Canvas.
Right.
And then there was this one.
There was this one. EduPunk. And it's
Which is
flipped upside down, and I don't know why it's doing that.
Timmy doesn't know how to fix that.
I know. I need Jim to help me with that.
Right.
So
I did give him
the
a little
leader
hard
of
time about
EduPunk.
that. Because, I like them a lot. I'm pretty happy with that product, but let's be honest, they're still an LMS. Plus, everybody knows EduPunk is supposed to be all caps. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
It didn't feel very legit.
I wonder if they emailed Jim ahead of time and asked his permission.
To ask him, yeah, he really...
Yeah, I really do. And I wonder if he gave that permission to them or not. I don't know.
So on that note,
it was a good
that was probably
conference.
my biggest criticism of the conference. That and the stars only door, which I never did find out what was behind that door. Andy told me that not everybody would be as interested in that as I would.
Really?
Yeah, he was sort of making fun of me on Friday about that.
I was really interested in it.
There was a door at the hotel. There was a ladies' room, like ladies, men, or women, men, and then there was a door right next to it that said stars only, and it was locked. And that's all it said. And I was like, this is a mystery that needs to be solved. But absolutely nobody else seemed to be intrigued by this.
You should have introduced yourself to one of the workers there and said, "Hi, I'm a star and I'm locked out.
I need to get into the stars only space.
I left my star key.
Yeah, I don't know.
In my star room."
Yeah. And it, from the way it was positioned, in the architecture of the building, it looked like it was about the size of I don't know, maybe a 5 by 10 room. So I don't think they really value their stars.
Really analyzed the architecture.
I really did. I did. I kind of scoped the space out to figure out
She was just minorly concerned about this.
You don't do that?
I don't know.
So are you happy with Canvas?
So.
Well,
are we happy with Canvas? Andy asked.
No, Jim asked.
Jim asked if we're happy with it. Over Blackboard.
Oh my gosh!
Absolutely.
Leaps and bounds and
I'm happy to have an alternative that seems to have developmental support behind it, that seems to have an attitude of much more openness. I know LMS and how can it be open and everything, but just in terms of integrating other products, allowing you to get your data out, allowing you to apply Creative Commons all from the get-go, not something that they suddenly announced at EduCause like Blackboard did or something, but this has all been built into the product from the get-go. So, in terms of if you're going to run an LMS, absolutely, I think Canvas is high up there.
And, the bottom line is that all of us in our institutions, we're doing amazing stuff in environments like UW Blogs or other sorts of flexible environments like that, but the bottom line is there are still faculty who want some of those management capabilities that are available in the LMS, and we're not quite positioned to do that anywhere else right now. And so for that, just in terms of having it as a baseline for that, I think it's really a really strong contender. And the fact that, as Timmy said, it integrates so nicely with other things, and I think they really have an eye towards doing more of that. And another thing that I really like about them as a company is that they recognize that just because they're in the education market, they don't need to own every single possible online interaction, from laundry machines to vending machines that happen within this space. I think they are very committed to carving out the thing that makes sense for this product, as opposed to trying to be all things to all people. And that's sort of a comforting thought, I think, for us.
Absolutely. And Kugler says that the stars doors are usually just doors to the maintenance hallway.
Really?
So,
Kugler, how do you know that?
Solve the mystery there.
The hotel workers are called stars. And that would explain why it was small.
It makes them feel like they're getting paid.
I
more
want
than
who is Kugler? He or she has all the answers.
Yeah. So,
wow. Okay.
So anyway, I think that pretty much covers it.
That was fun.
Thanks everyone for watching, and you can tune in DTLT today every day. And I'm going to pimp out my new show. It's coming this week. It's called Time Out. Hey, I've got to do it here. Come on. Keep watching DTLTtoday.com for more information on that. Thanks for watching, folks.
Thank you.